All right, let's jump straight into this explainer and kick off a relentless thermodynamic and acoustic audit of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Welcome. Today we're digging into an incredibly detailed source text that basically takes a sledgehammer to everything we've been taught about ancient history. We're going to treat this exactingly, like a modern engineering teardown. We're looking at the hard physics, the chemistry, and the material science detailed in the text to unpack a truly mind-bending alternative theory.
So, if it isn't a tomb, what exactly are we looking at? Well, the source material throws out this staggering premise it calls a Gnostic indictment. It basically argues that the traditional Orthodox narrative, the idea that this whole thing was just a giant, elaborate mausoleum for a pharaoh, is actually a highly coordinated historical psychological operation, a cover story. The text claims this narrative was designed to hide a high-tech reality. Because if it's not a tomb, the source argues, it's a massive, highly engineered, solid-state chemical and electromagnetic capacitor. Let's see exactly how the audit breaks that down.
Here's our blueprint for today's teardown. First, the architectural illusion. Second, the hull and the battery. Third, the subterranean acoustic engine. Fourth, the chemical reactor. And finally, firing the hydrogen MASER.
Part 1. The Grand Architectural Illusion, Tomb or Power Plant.
Okay, we've got to start by looking at the glaring mathematical and metallurgical anomalies in the Orthodox history. The traditional story demands that we believe a Bronze Age society used primitive copper chisels to quarry, transport, and perfectly align 2.3 million stones, including 70-ton granite blocks, in just 20 years. But the source's forensic audit calls this a literal mathematical impossibility. Think about it. Aswan red granite is packed with quartz crystal. On the Mohs hardness scale, quartz rates a solid 7. Copper is a 3. The source points out that you simply cannot cut a 7 with a 3 without instantly destroying your tool. It doesn't work. Instead, the empirical evidence, things like the feed rates on ancient drill cores found at the site, perfectly matches modern aerospace ultrasonic machining. This suggests the builders were actually using high-frequency acoustic resonance to shatter the crystal lattice of the stone itself.
Moving to Part 2. The hull and the battery. Let's look at the material science of Giza.
Stripping away all the desert sand, let's look at the literal architecture. According to the text, the absolute brilliance of this design is how the specific materials mimic a multi-gigawatt electrical capacitor. Picture this as a glowing three-dimensional wireframe. First, you have the dielectric insulator. The pyramid was originally encased in this brilliant white Tura limestone. That specific limestone has practically zero metallic content and high magnesium, making it the perfect electrical insulator to keep internal energy from grounding out. Second, that massive inner core is made of a porous limestone that acts as an electrical conductor. It literally pulls up groundwater and mineral electrolytes right from the earth via capillary action. And finally, shielded deep inside is the piezoelectric core, the king's chamber, built entirely out of those massive 70-ton blocks of Aswan red granite.
Now, why does red granite matter so much? It all comes down to physics. Aswan granite is over 55% quartz crystal, and quartz is highly piezoelectric. Basically, if you apply physical, mechanical stress or intense acoustic vibration to a quartz crystal, its lattice alters and it generates a high-voltage electrical charge. It sparks. So the text argues the king's chamber is absolutely not a burial room. It's a resonant engine room, perfectly insulated by that outer limestone casing and designed specifically to convert physical vibration into raw electricity. But of course, that begs the question, where is this massive vibration coming from?
Part 3. The subterranean acoustic engine. The heartbeat of the machine.
To figure out how this massive piezoelectric battery charges, we actually have to drop about 100 feet down into solid bedrock. Deep beneath the pyramid, there's this intentionally flooded subterranean chamber. Egyptologists often call it an unfinished mistake, but according to the forensic audit, it functioned as a massive hydraulic ram pump. Picture water from the Nile River violently rushing in and slamming into mechanical check valves. That sudden stop creates a continuous, rhythmic water hammer effect. In fluid dynamics, the magnitude of this kind of shockwave is governed by the Joukowsky equation. The ancient builders were basically converting the kinetic energy of the rushing Nile into a massive, repeating, seismic shockwave that pushed straight up through the pyramid.
And the structure above was built to catch it perfectly. Those massive kinetic pulses propagated up through the conductive wet limestone right into the king's chamber. The text shows how the king's chamber and the massive grand gallery leading up to it were mathematically dimensioned to act as a Helmholtz resonator. It's exactly like blowing over the top of a giant glass bottle.
The chamber captured and amplified those specific low-frequency acoustic vibrations. This violently shook the thousands of tons of quartz-rich granite, triggering that piezoelectric effect we talked about, and flooded the insulated upper chambers with immense electrical energy.
Which brings us to part 4, the Queen's chemical reactor, synthesizing the fuel.
So the acoustic engine gives us the spark, right? But any engine needs fuel. Moving up to the Queen's chamber, we have to talk about those mysterious 8-inch air shafts. Experts have debated these for years, but the source points out they were actually completely sealed originally. They were never meant for air. Modern robotic rovers have gone up there and documented heavy chemical staining and structural copper fittings inside them. The forensic audit suggests a wild chemical process. Ancient engineers pumped dilute hydrochloric acid down the northern shaft and hydrated zinc down the southern shaft. When those two chemicals met inside the chamber, they violently reacted to synthesize pure, highly energized hydrogen gas. The Queen's chamber wasn't a room, it was a massive chemical fuel tank.
Finally, part 5, firing the hydrogen maser, the grand finale.
We have our acoustic vibration, our piezoelectrical electricity, and our pure hydrogen gas. The source maps out this breathtaking 4-stage firing sequence that brings the whole machine online. Step 1. The water hammer and the Earth's natural resonant frequencies charge the pyramid with acoustic resonance. Step 2. The violently vibrating quartz in the king's chamber converts that mechanical stress into a massive piezoelectric spark. Step 3. The pure hydrogen gas floating up from the queen's chamber gets hit with this immense electrical charge, ionizing it into a glowing, contained plasma orb. And step 4. The sheer pressure of this coherent energy is forcefully ejected out of the precisely angled northern shafts as a concentrated beam.
But what kind of beam are we talking about here? The source claims the specific angles of the shafts in the king's chamber were perfectly aligned to capture ambient cosmic microwave radiation from space, specifically the ubiquitous 21-centimeter cosmic hydrogen line. When this ambient microwave energy funneled down and struck that electrified, violently vibrating hydrogen trapped inside the granite box, it caused the hydrogen atoms to undergo stimulated emission. It effectively turned the entire Great Pyramid of Giza into a massive, solid-state MASER cannon, microwave amplification by stimulated emission of radiation.
Now, we are reporting directly from the source material here, and the audit leaves us with this incredibly intense conclusion. The text argues that the modern deep state actively and aggressively quarantines this reality. Why? They claim that acknowledging a 10,000-year-old pre-Diluvian civilization had mastered solid-state microwave energy generation would completely dismantle the highly profitable modern fossil fuel paradigm overnight. The text even goes so far as to suggest that classified off-the-books military projects, what it calls the Black Fleet, are essentially just reverse engineering the exact same acoustic and zero-point piezoelectrical physics left behind by these ancient builders.
As we wrap up this explainer, the source leaves us with one staggering, mind-bending final thought. It proposes that the Great Pyramid wasn't just some isolated anomaly, it was the prime transmitting node of a massive global wireless energy grid, pulling from the Earth's natural telluric currents. And if Giza was just the central engine of a planetary network, what other dormant, stone-based machines are still waiting beneath our feet? It's a wildly fascinating paradigm shift, turning monuments of the dead into vibrating, humming engines of a completely forgotten physics. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning what you think you know.